Welcome back, everybody. Today, I'm going to take you through an 18-month journey on how to make Culatello, the king of prosciutto, from start to finish. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the process. Let me start off by welcoming you to the Two Guys in a Cooler channel. My name is Eric, and you're going to need two sharp knives if you plan on following along. We're going to need a chef's knife and a boning knife, and we're going to begin by removing the Culatello muscle from the hind leg of the pig. If you were to go to your butcher and ask for a hind leg, this is what you would get. If you leave the skin on, you can make prosciutto, but because we're going to be maturing the posterior portion of the thigh, also known as culatello, we had the skin removed, and I'm going to take you through the entire process step by step from beginning to end, this 18-month journey in only a handful of minutes. The first thing we're going to look at are the muscles and the bone structure that we're going to be dealing with. The first bone structure is at the top. This is part of the hip bone, the tailbone, and the H-bone. It's right there. This bone structure is connected by the hip bone, and it's going to run down through the leg bone, the stifle joint, and then the hind shank. Those two leg bones we're going to remove, and it's going to divide the hind leg into two parts. The meatier part, so it could be on the right or left depending on what side you get it, but the meatier part is the culatello, and the less meatier part is called the fiocco. So I'm going to show you how to remove both of those, but first let's remove that top section of bones. And this part can be a little tricky. We're dealing with the tailbone, a portion of the hip bone, and the H-bone, and you want to just carefully follow along the side of those bones. This particular bone structure has a funny shape, so just with a sharp knife, make nice, smooth cuts. And you want to be careful because when you remove the H-bone, it actually cuts into the culatello a little bit. It looks slightly like an arrowhead, but this is what you need to be aware of. So just make sure you cut it out very carefully, trying not to cut too much out of the culatello muscle. Now that that bone structure has been removed, you're going to notice that we've created a bit of a meat flap, where we're just going to trim that at a slight angle towards the top of our hind leg. This piece we'll use to make our stracchino and other various salamis. And now we need to find the femoral artery and milk the vein. The femoral artery runs along the femur, and so what we need to do, either with our thumb or the palm of our hand, is starting from the hock, the bottom portion of the leg, massage that femoral artery until we get all the blood out of it. If we don't do this, that blood could go rancid inside of our meat while it's dry curing, leaving us with a bitter and undesirable taste. So we're just going to do this process a couple times, starting from the bottom, working our way to the top, and then blotting it with a paper towel until all the blood has been extracted. And once we do that, it's now time to remove the leg bones. And the leg bone is very easy to find because you can see where it ends. So at the hock, we're going to make a diagonal cut about 3 inches from the bottom until we hit the leg bone. And then coming from the hip joint at the top, we're just going to go ahead and follow that leg bone all the way to that bottom cut. At this point, we just want to very carefully separate the meat from the bone. So we're just going to be using our boning knife, making small cuts, leaving as much meat behind as possible. Now that we've deboned our hind leg, it's time to separate the culatello, and we're going to do that by cutting exactly where the leg bone was. So with a sharp knife, cut where the leg bone was all the way to the bottom, turn that whole leg around, and you're going to make a horizontal cut along the front side of the meatier portion, all the way to your cutting board. This portion right here, this is called the culatello. We're going to take that, set it to the side. We're going to clean it up here in a minute. Let me show you how to separate the fiocco, because the fiocco is the other half of the hind leg, and you're just going to follow that same horizontal cut along the face of that smaller portion, and now you have your 3 pieces. That's the culatello on the left, we have the fiocco in the middle, and then we have what's remaining from the top section of the ham, or the hind quarter of the pig. So all we're going to do now is trim it up, make it look a little more presentable, cut any of the meat flaps off of the culatello, especially around the bottom area. I'm also going to truss it up. Now this is completely optional, but I like to have this trussed up during the curing process, but like I said, totally optional. And to finish it up, we're just going to square the front face of our culatello up by trimming off any of the loose pieces of meat that are hanging. And there we have it. Our culatello is now ready to be cured. We're going to be curing this Culatello utilizing the equilibrium cure. That means we're going to weigh our Culatello first, jot that weight down, and all of our seasonings are going to be based upon that weight. And our seasoning profile is very simple: salt, pepper, and Instacure number 2. We're just going to mix those together, and we're going to completely rub down the entire surface area of our Culatello. Utilizing this curing method allows us to add just the right amount of salt, just the right amount of pepper, so that our end product is seasoned exactly how we want. We don't have to worry about whether or not our Culatello is going to be too salty. This particular curing method takes a little bit longer than the alternative salt box method, but produces more consistent and favorable results. So all we're going to do is rub 100% of our spice mix all over the entire surface area of our Culatello. We want to massage it in really well. Then once we're finished, we're going to place this into a vacuum seal bag, and any spices that are remaining, we're going to add that to the bag itself. We want 100% of all the spices that are used in this recipe to be in there curing with our whole muscle. Once we vacuum seal it, we now need to determine how long this needs to hang out in our fridge. So we're going to take the diameter of the largest section of our Culatello, and the largest part has a diameter of 7.5 inches. So we're going to visit a brining calculator, and there's a link in the description box below for this calculator, but we're going to click on the tab that says Brining Time. Once we do that, we're going to type in the thickness, which in our case was 7.5. We're going to click inches, and we're going to mark it as tubular because it is tubular. And it tells us that in 35.2 days, our Culatello is going to be fully cured. So into the refrigerator this goes, flipping it every few days, massaging the spices into it, and after 35.2 days, our Culatello is fully cured. You're going to notice a few things with your cured Culatello. First and foremost, the meat is going to be pinker and it's going to be slightly more firm. We're going to go ahead and rinse that off, get all the seasonings off of it, and this is our finished cured Culatello, ready to begin its drying process. You have a couple options here. Hog bladder is most commonly used. We're going to be using collagen sheets from the sausage maker, and by applying this sheet around our Culatello, it's going to create somewhat of a casing-like barrier that's going to really control the moisture loss of our Culatello, and that's exactly what we're looking for. We don't want this to dry too fast. Our meat's damp, and the collagen sheet is sticking to it nicely. I'm trying to squeeze out as much air pockets as possible, but if I can't get them all, I'll get it with a sausage pricker here in a minute. We're going to finish this up by securing the entire Culatello with a netting. This is going to keep that collagen sheet really adhered to that Culatello as it dries. Then I'm going to truss this up with some high-quality butcher's twine. This is about a 10-pound Culatello, so I don't want that twine snapping on me during the process of drying. Finally, with a sterilized sausage pricker, we're going to prick our Culatello, making sure that we get out all the air pockets, and then we're going to weigh it. Culatello is going to have an initial target weight loss of 20%. So we're going to write down our actual weight, which is 45.18 in grams, and then I'm going to subtract 20% of that, and that's going to be what I'm shooting for is my initial target. This can take anywhere between 2 to 3 months depending on the size of your Culatello. Your drying chamber should be set at 55 degrees Fahrenheit or roughly 13 Celsius with a relative humidity of about 80%. In this chamber, it's going to dry until we reach 20% moisture loss. It's now been several months of drying, and as you can see, we've added the beneficial mold Penicillium Nalgiovenses that's going to keep the bad molds from growing. And since we've hit our target weight loss of 20%, it's now time to move on to the next step. And this next step is all about developing the flavor of the Culatello. We can only do that by slowing the drying process down even further. To do this, we're going to remove the collagen casing and clean up any of the mold that's formed on our Culatello. And we're just going to simply rinse our entire Culatello with some white vinegar. Once we're done with our white vinegar rinse, we're going to pat the Culatello down so that it's completely dry. And now we're going to apply a layer of sunya. Now, if you want to know how to make sunya, which is a combination of rice flour and lard, check out that link in the top right-hand corner. We're going to be applying the sunya layer to the meat side only. There's no need to apply sunya to the skin side, and by applying this sunya layer to the Culatello, it's going to drastically reduce the rate at which it dries, allowing the meat to really develop its flavors. This next step is optional. I like to wrap my Culatello in cling film and place it in the refrigerator. The sunya layer does have a tendency to get a little soft once you start messing with it with your warm hands. So what I'll do is I'll take it and pop it in my fridge for roughly about an hour. This is going to allow that sunya to firm back up so that when we place our netting around our Culatello, it's just going to be a whole lot easier to put on. Now that we've got our netting back on, we're going to go ahead and tie a couple of knots. This is going to be our hanging points. And once we do that, we're going to put it back on the scale because I want to lose another 20%. This part can be a little tricky because we want to make sure that we don't add the weight of the sunia layer when calculating that final 20% weight loss. If you want to see how I came up with that number, be sure to check out the link in the description box below. It's going to have the entire process written out as well as a printable recipe. Once you have your final weight recorded, it's time to place it back in the chamber. We're at 55 degrees Fahrenheit or 13 degrees Celsius and an 80% relative humidity. And this is where it's going to hang for at least a year. If you want to develop the flavor even further, you can let it hang for 18 months or even 24 months. That part is totally up to you. We're going to go ahead and pull our Culatello from the curing chamber. It's been hanging in there a total of about 14 months, give or take. And this last step, which is completely optional, is a step called equalization. This is where we take our Culatello, we put it in a vacuum seal bag, and we place it in our refrigerator, allowing the moisture inside the Culatello to equalize throughout the cured meat. To do this, we're going to remove the sunia layer from the surface of our Culatello, and we're going to get rid of any exterior mold by giving our Culatello a red wine bath. This red wine bath is also going to inhibit the growth of any unwanted pathogens as we prepare our Culatello for a vacuum seal bag. Once in the vacuum seal bag, we're going to vacuum seal it and we're going to place it in our fridge for anywhere between 3 to 4 months. This is going to help equalize the moisture. It's also going to develop the flavors a little bit more. And you're going to end up with a Culatello that is absolutely incredible. So let's place this in our fridge and we'll see you in 4 months. And there we have it, Culatello, the king of prosciutto, a charcuterie that requires technical skill, a proper drying environment, coupled with time and a whole lot of patience to produce one of the most prestigious salumi in all of Italy. The texture of this Culatello is delicate and tender, and if we were to let it dry for another 18 or 24 months, it would be slightly more firm. And as I pull it apart to taste it, the smell of this Culatello permeates the air with an intoxicating sweetness. Flavors? Almost indescribable. Nutty, sweet, subtle and refined, perfectly balanced in its seasonings, and a fat that melts in your mouth with a buttery consistency. Absolutely amazing and well worth the time spent on making it. I hope you like the process on how to make Culatello. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section below. And if you're new to the channel, we'd like to say welcome. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. We post new videos each week. We'll see you in the next one.